Hey everybody, welcome to Rock and Roll Confessional, Episode 1, Season 1, Disc 1, Album 1. This is it. Here we go. Well, Rita, it's finally happened. This is number 1, our very first episode that we're releasing.
What's our first episode?
Why, it's with Steve Downs.
I adore Steve Downs.
Steve Downs is great. I met Steve when I worked at KLOS Radio. He was nighttime DJ. Wonderful guy, great voice, and he was there many years, but then he moved off to Chicago.
First to Florida, and then, he did some of the programming stuff there, and then he moved on to Chicago. But I met him actually at KZY, which was the first radio station that I worked at in Anaheim, and, just a tremendous person. We have a lot of history that goes back, and, I'm just so happy for him because he's so successful, doing all the stuff that he did in Chicago morning drive radio for 15 years. That's saying something.
That's amazing.
At the drive.
Anybody kept that long on morning radio.
Yeah, so that was fantastic. And then he got this video game that a friend of his just suggested that he do, but he talks a lot in the podcast about, trying to be doing voiceovers and so forth. If you're in the radio business, it's not an advantage.
It's not easy at all.
But he talks about becoming a Master Chief for the video game Halo. In fact, he was in town for a big convention.
Halo convention that he was going to sit and sign autographs and meet people all day for 2 days.
But he has some amazing stories about like Axl Rose and Bob Marley. Man, I wish I could have seen.
Can you imagine interviewing Bob Marley or trying to interview Bob Marley?
That would have been interesting.
Very. But he talks about that, so that's really cool.
And he's just an amazing guy. I think you'll get a lot out of it. He gives us a sample of what Master Chief sounds like. And if you're wondering where Steve's confession is, you'll hear it in the first 20 minutes of the show.
Yeah. So if you don't know, we do start the show by asking all of our guests what their confession is, since it is called Rock and Roll Confessional. But it takes a little while for Steve to warm up into his mode of letting us all know what it is. So anyway, so this is number 1. We're going to have a lot of cool shows and interviewing a lot of different people and getting a lot of different stories. So I hope you enjoy this. Stay through to the end, and we will chat some more afterwards and tell you what's coming up.
I'm Rita Wild.
I'm CW West, and enjoy this interview with Steve Downs. Go, Reitz. You can always start.
Here it is, Rock and Roll Confessional time. With us, we have a longtime DJ in Southern California, but also not only in Southern California, did morning drive at the Drive in Chicago, worked in Florida, worked in your home state, I guess, Ohio and Pennsylvania, also KOS, KZY, KLSX. These days, mostly known for his work of Halo. Yes, the Master Chief is with us.
I thought it was Master Chef.
I used to call it Master Chef.
Rita used to call me. Hey, Rita and my 98-year-old mother calls me Master Chef.
This guy does Master Chef. You know, Master. You seen him, right? The Master Chef. What cooking channel is that?
Yeah, and by the way, I can't boil water, so
You're a 5-star Master Chef.
Yeah, that's me, buddy.
You can only get water.
Savior of the universe. Savior of the good guys.
The good guys. Yeah. Great to be with you guys.
Great to have you, Steve. Thank you very much. So let's start. How did you get into radio?
Music had always been my love, and I wanted to be a rock and roll star. I wanted to play in a rock band. I did play in a rock band from the time I was 12, 13 years old.
What did you play?
I started with guitar, and then I switched to drums, and all the way through junior high, high school, college. And got to a point in college where the band was starting to, be decent for those days. I mean, back in those days, all bands were, nobody did original material. We were all doing covers. But we got to some point, I remember a guy, it was sort of the classic, guy came up with a cigar and said, I'll make you guys big. You guys are going to go all over the world. You're going to be big. And your first gig is you're going to open for Three Dog Night. Yeah. You guys you're going to open for Three Dog Night, okay? You see? And but the point was, we at that point I was like a junior in college, and we had to make a decision. This wasn't going to be this wasn't doing frat parties and beer joints. This is going on the road.
It's hardcore.
And so I had a rare moment of common sense that came into my head and said, that I don't see being a drummer in a rock band as a good career move, and so I didn't. But I wanted to do something that had something to do with music. And so my next thing was, I think I'd like to be a producer, because I was fascinated by, I used to get, this back in the days when you got albums and they had credits on them and you could read all about the music and the people who put the music together, and not just the songs. And I was fascinated by all that stuff. So I thought, okay, I want to be a record producer. Well, there was no school you went to be a record producer. Your education was you walked into a recording studio and somebody handed you a broom, and that was your
work your way up.
That was record producing 101. But I thought, okay, well, maybe radio. I could get into radio. So the college had a radio station, and I hung around and got a job doing weekends at the college radio station, and boom, that was it. The ham in me took off, and I loved that, and I loved playing the music. Back in those days, it was free form. You could play whatever you want.
In college,
and for the first couple radio stations I worked for after that were free form. You walked in with a bunch of albums under your one arm and a joint in the other arm or the other hand, and boom, pack of cigarettes and let it go, man. And that's what we did, and it was a blast. It was so much fun. That was the beginning of that.
What happened to the band that was going to open up for Three Dog Night? Anything?
Nothing. We all went our separate ways.
1910.
Quickly.
I think girls got involved, girlfriends and stuff like that. The whole thing just fell apart. Thankfully, but I got into radio and just never looked back. I thought it would be a stepping stone to something else, but I loved it so much that I stuck with it.
So where'd you start? What station?
It was the station after college. Well, it was Dayton, Ohio was the college, University of Dayton, and they had an unusual situation because the station was we sold commercial. It wasn't like most college stations where they're basically public radio. This was an actual commercial radio station that sold time, was all that kind of stuff, and with the exception of the general manager and the chief engineer, everybody else was a student. All the sales force was students. Everybody on the air were students. So you really got a great, real education. And we got paid $1.25 an hour.
Wow.
$1.25 an hour. Cash.
I went to the wrong school. I had to pay for my 3 units every semester to take radio.
We actually got $1.25 an hour. I remember. And then from there, I went to Athens, Ohio, where the slogan for the radio station, and I kid you not, was, "We're the only station in town." Because we were the only station in town. You were listening to us or you were listening to white noise. There was nothing else. Our ratings were tremendous. But I did that for a couple of years, and then from there went to Pittsburgh for in the mid '70s, and did that, and then eventually out to Los Angeles. But
and out here you started KZY.
Started at K West.
Oh, right, K West.
106 K West, and did that for 2 years.
It was a great station.
It was a great, we were what, third, that's when rock and roll radio was king. Yeah. Think about it. In those days, there was KLOS, KMET, K West, and K Rock.
And don't forget KHJ.
And KHJ is a top 40 station.
Yeah.
But just
AM, right?
we had 4 album rock stations vying for an audience, which was pretty cool. Now, K West was 4th on that list. Well, I think we were
probably 3rd.
Yeah, we were 3rd. K Rock was really just getting started at that time.
I think that was Rick Carroll and
they eventually became, of course, what K Rock became. But K West was 3rd behind KMET and KLOS, and so I was there for a couple of years until they changed format, and then went down to KZY. And that's where I met Rita, and we did that for a year or so.
You did that for years. I was there for about 3 years.
And then you came shortly after that up to KLOS. But that's how that began.
Wow, that's great.
And then he was working here at 91. You were probably here at CW, but Ken Anthony was the one that let him go.
We're gonna fight.
Wait,
poor Ken.
Do we emphasize that?
No, we did in the last one.
We did.
Should we also put a sign on his locker out here?
I think you
just
can.
a reminder.
I think you should, because Ken, I was.
Why did he let you go, Steve?
In all honesty, when during the mid '80s, again, rock radio was huge, and the highest rated time slot was nights. It's the exact opposite of the way it is now. Mornings in rock radio was not a big deal. It was nights that had the, and at one time, KLOS was the number one station, 12 plus at night.
Wow.
So we were kicking ass and taking names, but that kind of went away. So towards the end of the 80s, it started to shift to, mornings being the big deal and nights were lagging. And there
were more television stations at that time.
Yeah.
More things that took people's attentions away.
Exactly. So they wanted to do something different. My contract ran out, and I remember Kerry Curlup was the PD before Ken, and he didn't have the balls to fire me. He didn't want to.
Right.
Kerry and I were good friends.
Yeah.
And he just didn't want to. So I went for about 2 or 3 years, or about 2 years with no contract. And then Ken finally, it was left to Ken to have to do the dirty deed. And I was telling Rita, the last time I saw Ken was at Bob Coburn's memorial. And Ken had to be 15 minutes apologizing to me. Now, this happened a zillion years ago. And I kept saying to Ken, it's okay. We're okay. Good. I'm fine. Yeah. Things worked out. It was, as things always work out the way they're supposed to work out. But he was like, I'm really sorry. It was like it happened yesterday. And I hadn't eaten since.
Was he planning to bring you right back?
I don't know what he was planning on. It was like, where are we going with this, Ken?
Well, it was weird just a couple of years after that, too, is when KLOS kind of changed again.
Yeah.
And they fired Bob Coburn and Joe Benson and Gino Michelini.
Yeah.
And it was like then they started going, I don't know what, I think more, who knows what they were doing. Going after KNEC, I guess.
Oh, that was the 90s when KNEC disappeared?
Before it disappeared.
Yeah, and went to the heavier rock and started
real,
getting the Monster Magnet and the real everything that KNEC was playing.
That's kind of like the era that you should have been here more for that so that you could have enjoyed that. But it wasn't really, that great a time, I guess. No. And when everybody
so
left.
You should have been here.
Yeah, it was weird. I tell you what, I was telling Rita, I loved Los Angeles. I loved living here. I loved being part of the radio scene and the whole vibe here. People you either love LA or you hate it. There's very few people that are like, it's all right. And people feel one way or the other about it. And I loved it. And when I left, I left. And it was kind of like breaking up with a girlfriend. You're just never going to go back there. And I haven't been back that many times. Not intentionally, but I just, the fates have just worked that way. And when I do come back, it's like going back to your old girlfriend's neighborhood. Except she doesn't live there anymore, and nobody knows you. It's so strange because it's something that used to be just in my veins, and we all move on and you do different things.
Well, after that, you went to Florida, and then you took up programming too.
Yeah, I had done actually when I was in Pittsburgh. I was a program director, and when I came out to K-West, actually, I was a program director.
I didn't know that. Okay.
With Tom Yates, who was one of the original KLOS PDs. He started a consulting firm. His first client was the station in Pittsburgh, WYDD, and his second client was K-West. And when he got K-West, I got on the phone with Tom, and I said, dude, I'm your guy. I got to be there. And eventually it happened, and he brought me out. I did middays, and I was the program director.
I'm trying to think some of the names, like China Smith, Rachel Donahue
was there. Wow. Phil Hendry was there. J.J. Jackson was there. Radio Rich Dalton, that's the other guy who did overnight. And so it was, meeting Rachel Donahue was kind of cool. Yeah. But that lasted a couple years. And then they blew up, and, you walk in one day and it was like,
there it goes.
Sorry. See you.
So program director, right?
I was program director, and I was program director there, and then they demoted me from program director, and I just had an air shift, which was fine. As you said, you never want to be
Nope,
it
never
is the
again.
definition of a thankless
But give us
job.
An idea what program director,
what you
did as program director.
The program director, sort of guides the radio station. You guide the talent. You guide the music. You decide what music's going to get played, what isn't going to get played, how much it's going to get played. But the programming is you're programming the radio station, putting up with asshole disc jockeys day in and day out.
Steve, I'm not sure that I really think that we have that song should be on the air. My son doesn't like it. So would you put the other song on, please?
Now that's management.
That's management.
Now
Well,
you're
that's
talking
GM.
management.
That's
Yeah.
GM.
That's the general manager,
Yeah.
who's all of a sudden he has a real good idea about how the station should sound.
Because it came from sales.
Yeah,
It's-
I think it came from sales. Yeah.
So yeah, that's what a program director does, and then tries to keep everybody in calm and only work 10, 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
And
Baby the disc jockeys and
then try and have your own life
Well, yeah.
outside.
I mean,
but then
that's
you got
what,
the record companies calling up saying, "Hey, my record,
Play
this,
this, play this,
play
why'd you
this,"
play
and then
that?
it's like you got to come see this band, man. They're going to be huge.
Yeah, and so Rita did that for how many years?
Too long.
How many? No, 10?
As a program director?
Yeah, as a program director.
I lasted 10.
10
Yeah.
years in Los Angeles as
Yeah.
a program director.
which is
With-
very heavy.
And
with a
she's
top
still
rated-
here to tell the tale.
Well, I'm here doing, part-time DJ.
No, but I mean, you're still
Yeah.
alive.
Still
That's what I'm
alive.
trying to
Trust
say.
me. There was
There's times.
there was a lot of drinking. There
I
was
know.
a lot of therapy. There was a lot of,
There was- There were
gotta go.
times it got close a couple of times.
Oh man, but yeah.
Oh, my God! No,
boy,
it is
so many
really.
times.
It's just.
Let me tell you about the Cooder incident. Did I tell you about that one?
You're going to go there?
No, I'm not going to go there.
So as program director, you had to meet with the record companies. They'd come. Is this like
Yeah.
it did in the 80s where they come in like once a week and they try to grovel for the new hit
Absolutely.
and try to
Yeah.
play the song and meet with you and
Yeah, and this, if you only play this song, this is going to be, come on, and they lean on you heavy. So you're getting a lot of pressure from a lot of different, coming at you from all sides. You have sales, you have record companies, you have your talent, you have the GM, who all want a little piece of you and all want you to do. They have the best idea for your radio station.
of course they do,
So your job,
which is how they make money.
yeah, is to try to to keep your own sanity, and B to be able to keep that the radio station, because at the end of the day, it's like a lot of jobs. What's the expression about failure is success has many fathers, failure is an orphan. So no, it's the reverse.
It makes sense to me though.
Success.
I've been there both.
No, that's right. I had it right. So yeah, because everybody takes credit when the station's successful. It's everybody's, but when it fails,
Yeah.
it's
Your
your
fault.
fault.
Yep.
You know?
Well, one of the things I was saying
And it pays like shit. On top of it, just the capital for you kids out there who are looking for a good career choice.
stick with
Programming
podcasting.
for radio?
Podcasting pays more.
That's right. That's right.
One of the things I have always complained to Reed about in all my years as promotion director and meeting with all the record companies, I felt really out of the loop because I never got offered drugs. And I don't know about you, but maybe this is where we ask you about what do you want to confess? But
Well, yeah, there was a time. There was one band. I can't remember. They had the egg was in the name of them. I can't remember. But I do. Now this was when I was in Pittsburgh. But yeah, a guy came into it was the classic, laying out the record album, and you opened up the record album, and there was a little surprise inside, and it wasn't the vinyl. And,
See, I never got to experience those days.
so my confession was, yes, I did play that goddamn record for about a week.
wait, and they had the name Egg in the title of
I
the
want to
band?
say I can't really. I mean, that's how big the band became. Apparently, apparently their investment
So if it was
didn't really pay off.
if it was Zeppelin, you might have gotten a month's supply of
Yeah, well, if it was Zeppelin, that'd be a different story.
Yeah.
But that. So you pried that out of me, CW.
Well, I've been thinking that up for weeks.
So, and then you go to Tampa, a
Yeah.
big station there, YNF, and then you go to Chicago.
Well, actually, I came back to L.A. for a minute.
Oh, okay.
For, as they say, for
Kayla.
a cup of coffee. I came back to do Rockline is what really brought me back. And then on top of that, I was offered a gig doing afternoons at KLSX. And that lasted literally for 7 months. And then
The KLSX part.
KLSX. And then, talk about drugs. The guy who, and I will spare his name. I think he's dead
Just
now.
blame it on Ken Anthony.
It wasn't Ken Anthony. Although Ken Anthony was the PD then.
Well, see?
Because Ken Anthony did
That's
hire
right.
me. He redeemed
Oh,
himself.
my
He
God,
hired
that's right.
me at
He did.
KLSX.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah.
But his boss, the GM, was he was big on the nose candy, and it was a nut job. And I'll never forget the day I was hired and I came in to meet him. First day on the radio at the radio station, the very first thing he said to me is, "We're not running that goddamn Rockline." Literally, these are his first words to me. Because there was some suggestion that
welcome,
it's like, yeah, nice to meet you too, by the way.
Yeah.
So they never ran Rockline, but I did afternoons there from April. I remember it was April Fool's to New Year's Eve. Hired me on April Fool's and fired me on New Year's Eve, and then did KLOS did Rockline for a period beyond that. Went up to Santa Barbara, K-Tide, for a year and a half or so, 2 years maybe. And then eventually went to Chicago after
How long were you on Rockline?
About 3 years, a little less than 3 years.
Okay.
And it was a great time. I mean, are you kidding me? It was,
and some of the people that you got to interview.
Oh my God!
Yeah, who were some of the?
Well, we did Page and Plant when they came with their Unleaded project. We did the first broadcast interview with the Reunited Eagles.
Oh my God! Hell freezes over.
Yeah.
So I got a story about that one. So when I was on KLOS and Don Henley's solo album,
here we go,
The End of the Innocents, and that song, and we played it. And this is the thing about being on the air in LA is you forget sometimes that a lot of the people you're playing live here and hear you playing and they want to hear you playing their records on the radio. It's like no other town in the world. And sometimes you forget that. And so I'm playing The End of the Innocents for the first time anywhere on the radio. And if you remember that song, it was a collaboration with Don Henley and Bruce Hornsby. Yeah. And I thought it sounded more like Bruce Hornsby than it did Don Henley. And said so after I played it for the very first time on the radio. I back announced it. I came on after the song and said, that was Don Hornsby. I mean Don Henley. And well, of course, Don Henley heard it.
Is this where the letters began?
Yes.
For everybody.
Yes. And Don Henley was not known for his sense of humor. And Bill Summers got a letter from Don Henley's attorney. It was so stupid because what's he going to do, sue me?
And then I think there was a time when he was like late for Rockline, and Gino said something. It played "I Will Not Go Quietly," the song that had Axl Rose, and I will not be on time either to Rockline.
Yeah,
one of those happened.
Yeah. And so anyway, then that happened, and then however many years after that, now I'm doing Rockline, and we're doing the Reunited Eagles. I remember we did it in Boston. And I'm thinking, okay, Don Henley's going to be the type of guy who doesn't forget anything, no slight, real or imagined. And I thought, he's going to come in and ream my ass. Well, he didn't. Either he did forget, or he just was like, whatever, But I remember
still waiting.
I remember sweating bullets, and but we did them. We did the Reunited Kiss, which was that was a big deal, and also. You're doing some grunge stuff too, so you got stuff like Pearl Jam.
We
did Pearl Jam. One of the first Pearl Jam interviews or Rockline appearances. We did Guns N' Roses
with
Axl and Slash in the studio, and then another story was Slash was on by himself, and the next week was going to be Kiss, Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. And as often they would do on Rockline, sometimes they would have next week's guest call in on that show, and you go, "Oh wow, it's Paul Stanley. How you doing? Oh, Paul's going to be on next week." Blah blah blah. So it's me and Slash in the studio. Slash is stoned to the bone, and he was smoking dope the entire time we were in there. As high as a kite. So we go to commercial break. And Jim Villanueva, who was the producer, gets on in my headphones and he says, "Okay, Paul Stanley's going to be your first call coming out of the break, and talk about next week's show." I said, "Fine." So then Slash hears this and he goes, "Paul Stanley, he's such an asshole." He says, "They tried to produce us. The Kiss wanted to produce us, and he said he hated him. And I always hate. He's going on and on and on, unbeknownst to Slash and me and the engineer who forgot to hit the button." Paul Stanley's hearing this entire conversation. We don't know this. Ooh. So coming out of the break, okay, we're back, blah, blah, blah. Let's take another call. "Oh, my God, it's Paul Stanley. Paul, how are you?" "Fine, Steve. I was just enjoying your conversation there with Slash." I'm like,
Whoa.
I'm watching my
God.
career.
Again.
This is live. Now you understand.
Yeah.
It was live and nationwide.
Ooh.
My whole career.
Because you're not ready to respond to that in that way
I
at all.
had no idea, and I'm like, oh my God. Slash literally falls off his chair laughing. He thinks he thought it was hysterical. He's like reels back.
So he's just taking you under the boat with him.
We're going right under the bus there. He falls. Literally, you hear this big crash in the studio. Slash is laughing his ass off, and I'm like, and of course, not only am I so. I'm trying to replay in my head, what did I say? What did I say? What did I say? Did I agree with him? Because I was never a big Kiss fan either. But did I say that? Did I say I was never a Kiss fan? Did I say, oh, wow, yeah, I always thought he was an ass? Did I say any? And I'm like, my mind just spinning a mile. And knowing that next week, Paul Stanley is going to be sitting right where Slash is with Gene Simmons live.
Who's a lot crankier
Who's a lot crankier
than Paul is.
Yeah, but I will say, to their credit, next week came along and I am sweating bullets, and I I come crawling into the studio, like, Paul, listen, man. And he said, I'll forget about it. He said, yeah, Slash, he's a jerk, but who cares, and really, literally,
Wow.
not a word.
Water under the bridge.
When he could have toasted us and me personally,
Yeah.
never said a word. So I got to say to Paul Stanley, class act.
Wow. That's pretty.
Slash, not so much.
I'm forgetting the space in between Coburn.
Yeah.
Because at first it started with B. Mitchell Reed doing Rockline,
Yes.
and then it was Bob Coburn.
Right.
And then I think Bo Riles.
Bo Riles did it for a
And
minute.
then you did it, and then I'm trying to think what happened with Bob. Did he?
There was another guy who did it for a while.
Ricky Rackman?
Yes,
Oh, really? Wow.
I think it was
From
Ricky
MTV?
Rackman.
Wow.
I think it was.
Wow.
Good
and
one.
then Bob got the show back, and then I think he eventually,
Bought it.
owned
He
the
bought
show.
it, yeah.
But I think he came back while Rockline was still Rockline.
Yeah.
And did it for a while, and then when they were going to close it up is when Bob bought the rights
Right.
to it and went on.
So it must have been where it was like a contract dispute here that he went somewhere else.
He did,
or...
yeah. It was a contract. I do remember this, and I will say this. When they first called me about doing Rockline, now, like I said, there was already somebody else between me and Bob. So, and it's like I said earlier, you don't want to be the guy who replaces the legend. You want to be the guy who replaces the guy who replaced the legend. And that's who I was. But, Bob was, he was a friend of mine, and even though we hadn't been in touch, a long time, I do remember saying, look, are you using me as a wedge with Bob? Are you, because if that conversation's still going on, I don't want to have anything to do with it. If it's over and both parties have moved on, then we have something to talk about. But I'm not going to, be used as a ploy.
Right.
Because I don't want to do that to Bob, and I don't want to do it to myself. And so, anyway.
You're a man of integrity.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
No, I would. No,
That's
you're
a very loose interpretation of the word integrity. But
well, no, I
I'll
mean,
take
it's just
it.
it's just like you've always been a class act. I mean, it's like I remember first working with you at KZY, and this big time DJ, and I had just started on the radio. I'm one of those people.
You were new then when I came down there?
I'd probably been there a year, maybe. But I had interned there for 2 years for free, So it's like, intern.
I got 3 years intern.
3 years intern.
Well, that's
So,
the way you start.
I was lucky enough that, Dave Foreman said one day, make me a tape. And I thought, oh, shit, man, I'm having so much fun here. I really want to just work in this business. So I made him a tape, and he says, you're on the air next weekend.
Wow.
And it was like, oh, okay.
Wow.
And actually, I wound up replacing Shauna. And Shauna came up here to KLOS. Yeah.
Wow.
Talk about right place at the right time.
Well,
but
so much of that.
Yeah. Just, and I still tell people, if it's something that you love, it's not work at all. And, it's like these days, I mean, everybody still has your rent, your insurance, and this and that to pay. And, no wonder, kids live at home till they're, 28, 29, 30, 35, whatever, because you just can't afford it. But if you're, working in a business and you see an opportunity to maybe make that step to move up.
Yeah.
I never expected it. I never anticipated it. I never really wanted to be a disc jockey, to be honest with you. I wanted to be a music director. That's all I ever wanted to do. Just be around it.
Yeah.
Or
that was
production.
me too, I think, too. Once you put a mic in front of me, there was no turning back. But yeah, I was the same way because I just love the music. And what you started to say and I'll back it up 1,000%, is if you're lucky enough to find something that you love, man, just go for it and don't look back.
Yeah.
Don't think about the money. Don't think about any of the other things. Because we spend too much of our lives, all of us, working. You spend a hell of a lot of time working. You might as well try to do something that you get joy out of. And if you do, and if you pursue it, not always, but I think good things will come.
Mm-hmm. And then don't spend like 30 years saying what if.
Absolutely.
You can't.
You don't want to do that.
Can't spend your time in the past, so you got to be at peace with your decision, whatever it is that you do. So yeah. Let's talk about, so you did Morning Drive Chicago, then you did a lot of voice acting.
Do you remember the show? It was on ABC Friday night, ABC Rocks. Basically, they were showing music videos for 90 minutes. That was the show.
Friday night or Saturday night?
It was on Friday night, yeah. And because I started doing voiceover.
Oh, were you the guy that said ABC Rocks?
I was their announcer, for however many minutes that show lasted. But yeah, I started doing voiceover when I was here. What I really, again, you kind of come in things from the side door, and what I enjoyed doing was going back to the production of it, and that started when I was in Pittsburgh, producing radio commercials. It was fun, especially like for concerts. But I enjoyed being in the production room and producing commercials and stuff, where you're taking music and you're cutting the music and then you're putting the voice in and you're doing this and all these little nuances, and it was a lot of fun. From that, and of course I was also the talent for my own commercials, conveniently, and but from that I decided wow, voiceover is a lot of fun, and then you start to explore those avenues, and in Los Angeles there's a whole lot of opportunity for that. Got an agent, started doing auditions, and it became like another side business. And quite honestly, over the years, as radio became less fun, voiceover became more fun.
And boy, were those checks good.
Yeah, and they were when you got them, you're 99% of the time. For doing voiceover, doing any kind of acting, really, you got to have a thick skin for it, because most of the time you're hearing no. Well, most of the time you hear nothing. You just don't get the job. So my wife, who's also a voiceover, one of her kids, when he was younger, and he was at school, and they were asking, what does your daddy do? What does your mommy do? So what does your mommy do? She auditions. But out of the mouths of babes, that's exactly what she did do, because 99% of the time, that's all you're doing. 1% maybe you get the gig.
It's a tough business.
It's a tough,
the voiceover business. There's so many people that are legends.
Until you get completely locked into it. I think we were talking about, someone like Gilda Radner or something who's has thousands of credits of voiceover and stuff. But
she's dead now. How many years? So it's
I'm not Gilda Radner. Lorraine Newman.
Lorraine
Newman. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't
so
know
she
she
does
was
a lot of stuff.
Voiceover, really.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is just it's like being in the right place. But you had mentioned something earlier when we were talking earlier about how you would think a radio person would be automatic to go to the voiceover.
You would
booth,
think that's an automatic,
and it's not.
It wasn't for me. Now I think for some people it has been, but it wasn't for me. And part of my theory about that was, when you're doing voiceover, the exciting thing about voiceover is every job's different. So every job requires different things from you. So when you go in to do an audition or to do a gig, you got to come up with the right voice. The writer's telling you what he wants, the director's telling you what he wants, and you got to find. So every day is a new day. Every day is a different thing. With radio, you're doing a 4 or 5 hour shift. You have your persona. There's the Rita Wilde persona that you go on the air with. Is it close to who you really are? Of course it is, but it's also...
It's my agent.
Sorry. You got to take a call? Bigger name?
Audition coming up, Rita? Are you going to play Powderpuff Girl?
Yeah, I'm in. I'm doing it. Yeah, okay, I'll be there. But my point is that, I would get locked into the persona I developed as a disc jockey, and then... so you're on the air 5 hours doing that. You get off the air. Now you got to audition for selling power tools. It was hard for me to really lose the radio thing to bring it into the audition for the Power Tools gig or, whatever. That took a skill that I'm not sure I was all that good at. So.
Did your voice, has it changed from when you started, or have you pretty much had this consistent voice that you're speaking in now, or did you start higher and start smoking that it's going to make your
smoking.
Wasn't that the thing in the 60s that
everybody smoked.
Well, I did smoke.
But I meant it was going to make your voice lower so you'd sound like a better DJ.
I didn't smoke because it would make, I smoked because I liked it. but
because it's addicting.
Because it's goddamn addicting. But I grew up, what drew me really to radio was the birth of FM radio, of FM disc jockeys, and those guys who talk like this, and that was the Rolling Stones, and the Tom Donahues of the world, and for me it was a guy named Jimmy Roach who was in Columbus, Ohio, and shows that those guys, I thought, oh, these guys are the coolest of the cool. They don't get any cooler than this.
Did you see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Yeah.
And?
Great.
Because of the KHJ, that was just the way it was. I mean, radio was such a part of your life.
Yeah.
In the car, that was who you talked to, who you sang with.
Absolutely.
It was a meeting point. It was its own character.
It was, and I loved that movie. I thought, he really captured L.A. In that period of time.
Yeah, a lot of those guys like Charlie Tuna, the real Don Steele.
Yeah, those guys. They were, and to be a huge celebrity and be on the radio in this town was saying something. Because when I first came to this town, you'd pull into the gas station and tell the guy, hey, I'm a disc jockey on KLOS. You go, yeah? What do you want? Because
they still do that, man.
Yeah, because guess what? Burt Reynolds just pulled in ahead of you. And before that it was, some famous rock star or whatever. You were nobody. You were, low man on the totem pole.
But everybody sees you as being the disc jockey. That it's like the greatest, and it is an awesome job.
That's an awesome gig.
Yeah, it is.
No question.
There's no complaints.
So
about it.
Okay, so let's just quickly, what do you do as a disc jockey? I mean, I know the general thing is you announce records, you play the records.
It's different, like most things, it's different now than it was then. As I said, when I first started, it was literally freeform radio. And I was thinking about it, just the other day, it's like how self-indulgent I was on the radio. It was so ridiculous, because you had no constraints. You could play whatever you wanted. So I'd play whatever I wanted. And, when I go back and think about that, I was like, oh my God, did anybody listen to me at all other than me? I was entertaining myself, that's for sure. But out of that came, that's how, we know who Jethro Tull is. That's how we know who Led Zeppelin is. That's how we know.
Who produced them.
Because guys like that said, you ought to listen to this. And back in those, in the mid-late 60s on into the 70s, that's how we got turned on to that kind of music, because there was some disc jockey there on the other end who thought you should hear this.
But we also looked up to that disc jockey as God.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like that person knows everything about what we love.
Yeah.
And if they tell us to listen to it,
we listen. Yeah.
We're going to listen. We're going to go buy the album also.
Absolutely. And that, like I said, that's why Led Zeppelin. That's how I knew Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
Some guy on a progressive station in Cincinnati, Ohio, played Good Times, Bad Times, and Babe, I'm going to leave you, and boom, and you're right. That guy was God. He had radio disc jockeys, and then going back before that, to the Wolfman Jacks of the world, and who they had that power to break music and to turn you on to stuff. And it's a completely different game now. It's not even close to that. But.
And that's why it's like even with music, most people hear their new music from TV shows like Colbert. Hey, we're a special guest, a musical guest tonight is, or from YouTube, or just from somebody putting a link on Facebook or Twitter.
Yeah,
that's where I hear them. And there's so much stuff.
There
really is a lot of great stuff.
There is. Yeah.
There's a lot of crap too.
I was at they had Lollapalooza in Chicago, and I went for the first time, like what was it, a month ago, and this sort of tells my age, but hearing new music and being turned on by it. This guy Hosier.
Yeah.
Totally. I'd maybe heard him on the radio.
Jacob,
He was awesome.
Yeah.
He was awesome. And I thought, and it dawned on me. It's like, first of all, dude, you need to listen to more new music, and don't be so captured in the past, and and turn yourself onto it. But it was also rewarding to know there's still people out there writing and performing good music and doing
rock
original
music.
things.
Yeah.
That are fun, and it was exciting to watch him play and his band. He had a great band, and watch the audience get turned on by it. It was just so much. It brought back those memories of like being turned on to new stuff.
It just seems like it's so much harder these days.
Exactly.
And probably a generational thing because we're just not as connected. But to me, even when the Stones has a new album or Bruce has a new album, and you can't even go to a classic rock station and hear it because they're just playing the classic.
Yeah, which I always thought was weird. But yeah, that
to me they should be trickling at least.
Yeah,
giving us a little bit of taste.
It's hard to do.
But you know what? I mean, and
from a programming standpoint,
that's
you
exactly
can't.
what I was going to say.
Because bottom line, it's a business.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's all about the money and profit.
Yeah, and the listeners want what the listeners want, and guess what? They don't get tired of hearing more than a feeling. Yeah. They want to hear it.
And
I got tired of it, but
I got tired of it in '78.
But they don't, and
the record companies aren't putting out albums like they were because they don't have the promotional budget for it.
Yeah.
But the bands will go out there and play and then sell their music via a website or
merchandise.
Merchandise. That's where they made always their money.
Touring because they're not going to make it.
35%,
not going to make it selling albums anymore.
It used to be the other way around. It used to be touring was an avenue to sell records.
Yeah.
And they didn't make a lot of money touring. What they made money on was the records as they sold it as a result of it. But I got a real quick story about I'm a big fan of Cooder. He was a great slide guitar player, legendary guy, goes back to the 60s, all this stuff, still playing today. And I was a big fan. I'd never seen him in concert. And I finally saw him for the first time a couple years ago. He was actually touring with Ricky Skaggs and his family band, doing this bluegrass thing. And Rye was just part of the band. He didn't want to be a star. He didn't want to be, they didn't feature a set of him. He was just the guitar player in the band. After the show, the band comes out in the lobby to shake hands and autograph their merchandise because that's how they make the money. They sell. Well, Cooder was old school. He was like, "We got to go out to the fans, what, and shake hands."
Yeah.
And I remember him coming out, and he's walking to me, and all I wanted to say was, big fan, been a fan for years." And he was like, walked right by me. So it was like, I don't do this. I don't like shake hands with you people. And it wasn't like he was a jerk or anything. It's just. He was old school, and I laughed. I thought it was so funny that he was just like the concept. But that's how people, and musicians, and you talk about all the different avenues that are available now for your music to get out there. I mean, look at it. We're recording this thing today on a thing that's a little bigger than a pack of cigarettes.
Yep.
And we got 3 mics, and it probably sounds great. Now, if you want to record music, you get a room that's more or less soundproof. You get a program on your computer. You get some decent mics, Pro Tools or something, and you can record stuff and send it all over the world. And you don't need a record company. You don't need a manager. You don't need anybody. And you can put that music to the point where anybody in the world can hear it. Problem is, you don't get paid for it.
Not very easily.
So my thing is, how do we, because you're right, there is a lot of great music out there. How do we get it so these people can make a living at it?
Yeah.
And
then even with all the Spotifys and all the other music services, what they're paying artists and stuff. We were talking with Kip Lennon the other day, and it was just like, they get paid like maybe a penny, half a penny?
No, he said that it was Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young's song that had been played like 5 million times or something, and they got like a $500 check for it.
Wow.
So that's why you want to, repackage the album, repackage the CD.
Yeah.
That hopefully you still get your stuff. And that's why, Taylor Swift wants to
re-record
her whole catalog because the guy who bought her stuff, she doesn't own her music anymore.
Yeah.
So if she re-records it, she can put it on her own label and then make the money off that way, plus the publishing and so forth.
Yeah. But that's how a Taylor
Wow.
Swift can make
exactly.
more money.
Right.
Or Crosby, Stills, and Nash. But what about the Joe Blow,
Yeah.
Right.
who you don't know?
Who does write some great stuff?
Yeah, who maybe has great stuff out there. How do we get him so that he doesn't have to wash dishes on the side?
Well,
Yeah.
I think one of the other problems is, and we're going to be interviewing Paul Williams, who's basically the president of ASCAP.
Yeah.
I think from what it sounds like, one of the biggest mistakes that they made that the DVD companies didn't make was how accessible it is to be able to basically bootleg everything. You just copy it on your computer, you email it to a friend, and now they've got the album.
Yeah.
And so...
But I mean, now you don't even have to do that now. Like you mentioned Spotify, you pay whatever it is,
Right.
the pittance,
Yeah.
and you have access to almost all the music in the world. For like $7 a month or whatever it is. It's like, so how can that benefit? I mean, it's great for us, but
the artist
as a listener,
that did that.
for the artist,
and then how do songs become hits? Like I'm thinking of a Lil Nas. I'm gonna take my horse down the old town road. You know that song, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't even write the music for that. Paid $35 to get the music, and the thing has become the song of the summer.
Wow.
I mean, it's just like it's sold. I don't know, but it's just amazing, just like how that happens. But then what's he going to follow it up with?
Yeah.
That's the next thing. I mean, he'll be able to ride this out a little bit.
Yeah.
Further. Or ride this out a little bit further down the old town road. Shit, I gotta get into this stuff, man. Whatever.
You got to start writing your own songs, Rita.
There you go.
I do. Trust me, there's a million up there.
There you go.
Now let's talk about what you do now, because I just find this so fascinating. Halo.
Yeah.
You're a master chief.
Master
Chef.
Chief, not Master Chef, right?
Master Chief.
Yeah.
So that's got to be a lot of voice acting, because you probably don't see. It's not like animation. I don't think you don't see any of that.
No, you don't. Sometimes, occasionally, in the last couple of games, I might see a rough rendering of the animation that's going to go. And now, which this is new for Halo in the last couple of games, they have what they call motion capture acting. So there's a guy who's doing what they call motion capture, performance capture. The slang is PCAP. He's doing PCAP. So you've probably seen.
Where he dressed in a green suit and he's
all
balls
in black
all
or
over
green,
him.
and he's got these little dots all over. Well, all those little dots are feeding information into a computer program, so that when you see Master Chief moving, the animation is mimicking the movements of the actor. So that's why it looks much more real. The movements look much more real than they used to, because it's actually, the computer's actually mimicking, a real person. Sometimes I'll be able to see that guy, doing his thing. But really, it's more about understanding the story and the impact. And the unique thing about Halo, not so much now, because I think a lot of games have copied it, but back in the first game, they took the story part of it seriously. It wasn't just a shoot 'em up, it's that, it has that, but it also, they developed an actual story. And out of Halo now, there's books, there's tons of Halo novels and
merchandise,
comic books, and little animated features that have come out. And it's this whole, excuse the pun, universe has revolved around what started as a video game. So as an actor,
did you get a piece of that action?
I'm sorry?
Do you get
I get none of that action. I get none of that action.
Dang.
None
You don't get paid in stock.
I don't get none of that. But yeah, so it's a lot of fun to do.
Well, you've got like all these conventions that you go to,
and the conventions are fun
my
too.
God, I mean, what's it like? You probably, how many thousands of people will show up at a convention like?
Well, it could be, San Diego Comic-Con draws hundreds of thousands. But I've been to conventions that are 70, 80,000 people.
My God.
And then some of them are, 15, 20,000. But it can be at once bizarre and also rewarding. It's funny because I've been doing these Halo conventions that are specific to the video game. And so the people who come to that, every single person is there because of the game that you had a part in. And so you get some really intense conversations going on with people. And I would sit back and try to relate to it. I was like, was there anything in my life that was, and I couldn't think of anything until I thought of music. Because if I heard this story once, in conventions, I've heard it 100 times. You changed my life. You were the voice of my childhood. Wow. Things like that. I was having a really hard time in my life, and Halo is what kept me sane or what kept me going. I've heard that story, really? I'm telling you, 100 times. I was like, wow, was there, I couldn't, and then I thought about it, and music was that thing for me.
Yeah,
it did change my life. Yeah. When the Beatles came on Ed Sullivan, my life changed dramatically in every way you could think of, from the way I looked, the way I thought, and eventually the career path I chose was affected by that night.
That moment.
That moment, my life took a different direction that continues to this day. So I could think of something like that. So for some people, video games are like that for them. It can be a solitary experience. It can be something that, the guy down in his basement, that's what he's doing. And now with the way it is now, they're communicating with other people who are playing the game with them
the same time
all over the world.
Yeah.
And it is their moment, and it can be that moment of a very personal, intense experience. So that's how I can relate to it now, because I understand.
That's a great analogy.
That I did have that thing. It wasn't, video games didn't exist back in my day. But
we had pinball. The ball actually moved. We foosball. We had to shake the table.
Have foosball out there.
Do you play Halo?
No. I tried. I remember when Halo 2 came out, I thought, I got to learn how to, I should really learn how to play this game. This is ridiculous. So I got an Xbox and I got a copy of the game. And the game starts out where Master Chief is in this room and he's got to go out and do the battle. I couldn't get him out of the goddamn room because the game...
The door was locked.
No, but I mean, there's a sign above that says exit, this way here, do this. There's none of that.
And even though you had the entire script in your head, you still didn't know how to get out.
I had no idea. I tried for hours. And I was like, okay, screw this. I can't.
I know I'm going to wind up over here at some point because I voiced it.
Eventually, just by accident, I'll get out of the room. Never happened. So I thought, okay, for somebody like me, I either got to be pretty good at it or don't play it at all. But I can't be mediocre at it, just because people would be like, well, yeah, but you're Master Chief. You should be really good. It was like, so now I can just say, well, I don't really play the game. I'm into the story, which is true. I was never a big video game person. It was sort of, that wasn't my time. But
still, you become the character though so much that people relate to. I mean,
They do.
You are the Master Chief. Spartan 117.
It's as close as they can get.
Is that right?
Character.
117 Spartan?
Spartan 117. You've come a long way since Master Chef.
But since foosball.
Since foosball. But yeah, I mean, the voice actors, and it's not just me and Master Chief. There's a lot of voice actors that people want to come and see and meet and get their autograph and stuff, because that's as close as they can get to that character. Yeah. That's the closest to the embodiment of that character that
they'll ever get.
That they'll ever get. And so I think it's important when you are lucky enough to get one of these things is that you honor that character. Yeah. You have to honor what he means and what the game means to people, and respect their feelings and how much it means to them. And I think we do.
What's on the horizon for Halo?
We're working on a new game right now. It'll be out probably fall of next year. It's called Halo Infinite, and it's going to be. I can't really get into the storyline, mainly because I don't know it.
Nor would we understand it.
Nor would you understand it. But there's been an arc of it's kind of like Star Wars in a way, where Star Wars had the 3-movie arc that they then picked up later and now are about ready to finally conclude. So this has been like a 3-game arc that I don't know where they're going to go with it, but it is a continuation of that story and bringing out some new hardware for it, and it should be pretty exciting. So
I want to know how Master Chief sounds different from you, or are you just using your regular voice? Or are you just a little more depressed?
I never thought of it that way. He's a little more depressed. Yeah, that's it. Just do what you do, except be more depressed.
Dystopian society, so yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, he's just it's a lower register. It's this is Spartan 117. give me the coordinates. I just take it down in a lower place, and yeah, a little more depressed.
Do you ad lib at all?
Never ad lib. I have ad lib. They've never used
it.
Yeah, because video games. There's a whole lot of moving parts going on in a video game, and usually the voice acting is sort of the last layer that gets added before they're done. So you really have to stick with the script pretty close. We've done a few things here and there, but for the most part,
they know what they want.
They know what they want, and they want you
give
to
it to them.
And give it to them. Yeah.
So when will you record for the next game?
For the next game, I've done a little bit now, but probably more in earnest the end of this year or the beginning of next year. We'll get more serious about it. They're just working on a whole lot of things right now. They're just, like I said, there's the whole performance capture thing. There's the animation part of it. There's the game part of it, the gaming. I mean, there's just so many moving parts of these things that the voice acting is sort of the last layer that gets added.
I was watching some of the videos on YouTube, and just so I could try to understand the game, but to me it just felt like a 22-minute animated show, so I wasn't really understanding.
To see the way it is with Halo and a lot of games is we do things called cinematics, and cinematics will get you, the game starts and there's a certain storyline that's happening. The interesting thing about video games is it's participatory. It's not like a movie. A movie or a TV show or even music, you sit back and let it come to you. Video games, you participate in it. You decide, you make choices about how the story is going to move along, which I think is another reason why people get so much more intimately involved with it, because they're actually participating in the thing that you're seeing.
It's like, what kind of weapon I'm going to use? How much ammo do I have?
What direction?
What direction? Where am I going? Who am I shooting? Who's shooting?
What door am I going to try to get out of?
Eggs. Yeah. You can't get out of any of them. Yeah. So there's a lot. You have two elements happening. You have the game element of it, and then you have the storyline so you get so far in the game, you rack up so many points, or you do whatever, and now you have to go to the next level. Then there's going to be a little cinematic that will kind of continue the story for you. When we last left our hero, blah, 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 and now go. Yeah. And now you're back in as a participant, shooting up aliens or doing whatever it is you're doing. So.
Wow.
That's fascinating stuff. I'm so happy for you, because you're one of the all-time great DJs, but more important than that, one of the all-time great people.
Well, thank you, Rita.
And it's just wonderful to see great things happen to great people.
Well,
so I'm so happy that that these blessings have come.
Well, I've been very lucky. It's I can't say, but as we talk about, and I know the sort of the focus of this podcast is, first of all, to give people sort of an understanding of what it is that we do or have done or how it all works. But I think another good point, and we've sort of touched on it a little bit, is, yes, I've been very fortunate with this. I was tremendously lucky. You could all find cases in your own life where this would apply, is, yes, luck is involved, but you need to put yourself in the position to be lucky.
Absolutely.
And, as my wife would say with voiceover and acting, never get out of line. You always want to kind of keep being involved. And who knows, something really cool may happen. But you have to, and this goes back to doing, fulfilling your joy. What do they talk about? Following your bliss, and that's really what is so important. And if you do that, I think good things end up happening to you in some way or another. And the Halo thing was a tremendous stroke of luck, but it's also being in the position to stay in the game and be lucky, and hopefully good things will happen to you.
And also it's one of those things like in voiceover, it's like, I need this copy now, can you do it? It's like, oh wait, no, I've got dinner reservations, and then you explain to the family, oh wait,
that's got to wait. Dinner's got to wait.
Yeah.
You got to do what you're going to do. And that's, we've all had those moments.
Holidays, it's like you got to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Jesus, for the longest time, when didn't you work on Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
When didn't you work on Christmas or New Year's or the 4th of July? Or any of that stuff.
Yep.
You always did.
Yep.
It's like, and
I bet you Master Chief doesn't.
Master Chief don't work on no 4th of July.
That's right.
Hell no.
Thank you again so
thanks
much.
for having
we have
me,
the bonus
guys.
round.
Bonus round. Okay.
Okay, this is a speed round.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
You got 6 questions.
All right.
Favorite concert you attended?
Bob Marley and the Wailers.
Wow.
1977, Pittsburgh. I was on the side of the stage.
Wow.
And it was an amazing, amazing
Did you
night.
get stoned?
I interviewed him afterwards. Okay, we're going
Really?
beyond. I interviewed him, and I'll never forget two things I won't forget. The guy who came with me, who was my all-night guy, begged me to come with him to Marley's hotel suite. And I said, okay, you can come, but you'll take pictures. I want you to take pictures. Don't you know, the guy had no goddamn film in his camera. It's the one that got away.
Oh,
The other thing was, I remember interviewing him, and there was a spliff, as long as your arm getting passed around. Never was it getting passed to me or any of the other and it wasn't out of rudeness. Right. They looked at pot a completely different way than what we do.
Spiritual.
Yeah, it was spiritual.
Religious.
So it wasn't, it would be like going to church and have, your communion, somebody take communion and pass it to you. It just wasn't done. And the other thing I remember is I could barely understand him. He had that thick, heavy Jamaican accent, and that's another interview I still have somewhere.
Wow.
But I remember half the interview I had no idea what he was saying. I was just asking questions, and he'd be Rastafari, and I go, yeah. So and then I just ask another question. I never had any follow-up questions because I had no idea what he was saying until towards the end of the interview, your ear starts to get tuned in a little bit. But I would have to say that's the concert that comes to mind.
That's great. What was your first album?
Wow, my first album was a collection of movie soundtracks that I bought with $5 that I found on the side of the road during my paper route. I took the $5, went down to the drugstore, and bought it because it had the theme from the Magnificent Seven on it. Dun, 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 dun. And I loved that, and that was the very first album I ever bought. The second album was Kingsman Volume 2.
Wow.
But the first one was actually a movie soundtrack.
That's great. Who would you want to meet you've never met?
I never met any of the Beatles. And
any of them?
I never met any of them. That would have been John Lennon would have been I mean, imagine,
Yeah, imagine. He
imagine.
did that song.
What a great idea for him. When did you discover rock and roll?
Wow. Actually, it was before the Beatles, because my first real, I would say 1962, 61. But I remember the first time I heard Louie Louie was like, it moved me in a way that was a little uncomfortable for a 12-year-old kid.
Did you have older brothers or sisters?
I did. My older brother was 4 years older than me. I remember we had a clear demarcation. He was Four Seasons. I was the Beatles.
Oh, wow.
And never was the lines more clearly drawn.
Yeah.
Than those two.
So you didn't get any of his music?
No.
Yeah,
I mean, I came to like the Four
Yeah,
Seasons.
yeah.
I liked it. They were great. But I mean,
But they were no Beatles.
They were no
No.
Beatles, and he felt the same way.
Yeah.
That the Beatles were, a bunch of freaks, and But yeah, there was a clear. But I would say 62, 61, and probably Louie Louie was off
Okay.
the races.
What band do you regret never seeing live?
Led Zeppelin.
Really?
Never saw Led Zeppelin live. Just never had the chance. It just never. The stars never aligned. I saw the Doors live with Jim Morrison. I saw Hendrix. I saw Cream. I saw Janis Joplin.
Wow.
But Led Zeppelin.
I'll give you my Zeppelin if I can have those four.
Okay, all right. I'll trade you. I'll trade you. The Doors for.
Because that Jimmy Page solo that lasted, I think it was about 30 minutes.
A day and a half.
God. All right, Jim.
I remember.
Pull it back.
I saw the Doors in Columbus, Ohio, which was my hometown. This was kind of when, right before things started to really build to a fever pitch with him and, him getting arrested on stage and stuff. And I remember they were doing something. Things were getting real crazy, and the whole audience was standing up and started rushing the stage, and he was encouraging them. And things were just getting crazy, and I was right up there as a whatever I was. What would I have been? 15, 16, 17 years old. Yeah, right on. Death to the pigs and all that stuff. And then I look around, and I'm the only person standing up in the entire audience, and the cops are looking at me like, and I just
he was
okay.
speaking to you.
Go ahead, break on through. Yeah, go ahead.
One question
great.
for you.
Wait, can I give him his prize?
Give me. I get a prize.
Yeah, it's a bonus round.
Wow.
There you go.
Oh, George Harrison, All Things Must Pass Special Advanced Sampler.
I love the fact that it's got a bonus track on it. Yeah, that was the only version of the CD that came out. So really, what was the point?
Yeah.
Why did you need to call it a bonus track?
I don't know, but I can't thank you enough.
There you
CW.
go. Well, you won it,
Wow.
fair and square.
Awesome.
All right, Reese,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
We've both been, as we say, fortunate, CW and I, and I know you feel the same way, blessed to do what we have done.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to like a 20-year-old or a 15-year-old Steve Downs, or even that 10-year-old kid?
I would say don't do as many drugs. I think
What's your favorite kind?
Hey, look, it all worked out and it was all fun. Yeah. But I think if I had it to do over again, I wouldn't have done so many. I wouldn't have took so much acid. But yeah, I think drugs played a little too big a role. Who knows how it would have worked if I didn't? It's hard to say. But that would have been. It was like, dude, calm down a little bit. I think that would have been. That's what I would have. And beyond that, I don't know. I mean, everything else kind of it worked out all right. And the only thing I say that about drugs is because I can't remember the stuff that
I can't remember what I took.
Exactly, I can't remember what I thought. But that's sort of the what comes to mind when you ask that question.
But it's great seeing the trajectory that you were always at the top. But now this trajectory with Halo, it's just like another universe, man.
It's a gift, but boy, I mean, the great memories that we've had and that I've got to share with you. I mean, such a, the best times I ever had on the radio. You were involved.
Interviewing Tom Hanks, and I don't even remember.
You don't even remember it. The Tom Hanks interview. Yeah, I'm sure he doesn't remember.
Yeah, let's see that. You got to get that. I got to find that.
Yeah.
Well, you were interviewing. I was just drinking with him. I guess.
Yeah, you brought the beer.
I brought the beer.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah.
Anyway, Steve, thank you so much.
Thank you for having
Steve Downs,
me, both of you.
Stevie
available.
Dog Downs.
Yeah.
Stevie Dog Downs.
All right.
Thank you,
available
buddy.
on Halo and all over the place.
Yeah.
Thank you, buddy.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. I hope you enjoyed that fantastic interview.
Conversation.
That's a much better word.
Yeah,
because I'm not an interviewee. I just ask questions and
Yeah.
let the guests talk, because that's what it's really about.
Exactly.
Their stories.
And you do a great job with that, because I'm like, well, how does that make you feel? Or how did da 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 da? And it's like, get
like
over
a therapy session.
Yeah, it's like
Too much therapy.
from the layman position of just like, okay, let's, what is it? Whatever questions you ask.
So tell us, Rita, what in your childhood affected you this way?
Special thanks today to Steve Downs for flying in from Chicago to join us for our remote studio.
Yay.
You can follow the Master Chief at Steve Downs' website, stevedownsvo.com. Downs is spelled Downes.
Good one.
stevedownsvo.com. And at Twitter, at stevedowns117.
You can find show notes on our website at rockandandrollconfessional.rocks, ROCKS. I know it's very complicated, but it's kind of cute too.
How did you get that?
I applied for it through Google website. I don't know where Rocks is from. It's probably from, where's there a lot of
Aerosmith.
rocks? Maybe Aerosmith.
Anyway, we have more special shows coming up in the future with a lot of various different people from various different walks of life to talk about all sorts of wonderful things that you might be interested in.
You can follow us on Facebook at Rock and Roll Confessional, or on Instagram at the same, Rock and Roll Confessional. I want to give special thanks to those people that have supported us over like the last year that we've been trying to put this together. Friends and family who've patted us on the back along the way and said, this sounds amazing. I want to give appreciation to those folks. And I'd also like to give a big shout out to my wife, Elizabeth, who's been extremely supportive over the past year. Babe, I couldn't have done it without you. Thank you very much. And to my dear friend Pam, who came to me a little bit over a year ago and said, I have a great idea for you. I think you need to create a podcast and talk about all your music days. So to Pam, I tip my hat to you also. Thank you very much for the idea. And also a year ago, there was a young lady that had a podcast called Ologies. Allie Ward, who I wrote to just out of the blue because I love listening to her podcasts. And if you get a chance, listen to Ologies. You can find it on Apple Podcasts. And Allie was very kind enough to take the time in her very busy schedule to give me all the tips of how to put together a podcast, from everything from the equipment she used to the people she worked with and how she did it, and so much guidance that I appreciate it. And she doesn't know me from anybody else, but I just give thanks to her because she took the time, just gave us a lot of vital information on how to start up the podcast. So I thank Allie for that. And Reitz, thank you for going on this journey with me, because this is number one, and hopefully we'll be hitting number 2.
We might have hit number 2.
So,
hey, and Ology, I want to thank you for turning me on to that podcast as well. She really does an amazing job, Ologies.
Yeah. So if you get a chance, listen to that. But listen to ours first, because ours is just a little bit better, but hers is really damn cool too. So like Rita said, we've got some great shows coming up. I think that's it for now. So have a great time. We'll see you in 2 weeks when we release show number 2.
Dun-dun.
Okay, bye.